You are listening to Faithless Brewing, a Magic the Gathering podcast for the Spike Rogue. Each week we design new decks for tournament play. We put our creations to the test and share our findings on the air. Today we present our Brothers War Top 5s. The best cards for Modern, the best cards for Pioneer, the most overrated, and the most fun to brew. We also hear from Manacymbal with an MTG Vegas tournament report. That's all coming up on Faithless Brewing. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Faithless Brewing podcast. I am Dan Shriver, also known as Cave Dan, and I'm joined today... Where are you, Zach? All the way from Ontario, Canada. International Man of Mystery, it's Zach Manacymbal Ryle. Did I get that right, Zach? Are you in Canada?
I'm actually in Canada. I'm at home. I was the other week, and then I was in Vegas, and now I'm back. I took at least 3 flights in 2 weeks, so that was a whole hectic hullabaloo. But I'm finally back in the homeland, true north, strong and free.
So I'm looking at you right now in the comfort of your own home.
Yes, absolutely.
That's gotta feel good.
It really does. And I would be looking at you in the comfort of Jerusalem, but you don't have a camera on. But that's okay, because our viewers can't see you either. But I'm sure some fabulous pictures are going to come out of your trip here.
Yeah, so just you and me today. We are getting ready to kick off Brothers War Season 16 of Faithless Brewing. I believe the set goes live, Thursday? Is that right, on Magic Online?
Oh gosh, I don't ask me. I know the league ends in 4 days, I believe. So it's on the 15th the league goes. That's Tuesday, so maybe Wednesday or Thursday. That sounds about right. Yeah, it was very fragmented this time, where it was like, oh, it's the paper pre-release, and then the paper legality is first, and then online, something crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like the little gap. Sometimes we just need a breather after they dump all the cards. I mean, we did 2+ shows just going through all the cards, so if you want to hear just endless talk about spoiler, check out the last 2 shows. We went through all of that with David and Emmy. Today, I want to kind of bring all that together, take a step back and say, okay, we see all the cards, which ones actually matter? So if we put together some top 5 lists for Modern, for Pioneer, for cards that are just fun, or for cards that are perhaps overrated, ? So that's the agenda for today. But before we get into all that, we also just want to hear a little bit from Zach, because like you said, you've been traveling all over the place, and you were at MTG Vegas.
Yeah, MTG 30, big event. I've got my Arcane Signet and my Richard Garfield PhD here, which I will eventually part with for cards that I can play in formats that I play.
Does the Richard Garfield PhD have the fake collector's back on it, or is it a real card back?
I think it's a real Magic card.
I'm not interested then.
It's a real Magic
card. If it doesn't
card.
have the Black Lotus back, I'm not interested.
It's got a little Magic 30 stamp on it, though. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, nice.
I got a bunch of swag from there. I have a Thopter pin. Nice, beautiful Thopter pin. I've got the Magic 30 pin. I got the denim jacket, which is actually really, really nice. So I love the denim jacket.
Oh my gosh.
It's a denim jacket. It's black. Got a bunch of patches all over it, but they're all Magic themed. So it has like the Deck Master on one shoulder, and on the other shoulder, it's like Expert Level Expansion, which is like just... It's really well done, and it's very comfortable material. Same with the, what do they call it, like a 3/4 tee? It's like the baseball t-shirt with the Magic 30 logo on the front, and that's also really nice material. I've seen some bands live and checked out and bought some of their merch, and this is considerably more comfortable for around that kind of price. So I'm really happy about a lot of the merch they had.
That sounds like you made out like a bandit.
Well, I paid a bit, but you know what? It was worth it, and it was a very special event to get to take part in.
A fair trade bandit, we could say.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a huge event, and I will get into the details of my trip. But before I do, we probably have a little bit of housekeeping to do here, because if you love what we do, you can support us at patreon.com/faithlessbrewing, and that gets you a number of perks, doesn't it, Dan?
That's right. You get access to our Discord. I should have tied in with a merch right there. You set it up perfectly, and I just totally whiffed on the handoff.
Well, that's okay, because we've got our own merch. I was playing with the Faithless Brewing playmat this week. I've got a Faithless Brewing sticker on my deck box that I take with me to every competitive event I play.
Yeah, I've made my water bottle into a Faithless Brewing water bottle.
Oh, so did I.
Pictures of that all over the Middle East.
I took mine all over the Caribbean. New Orleans, had it in Vegas.
So if you want to get in on this top tier DIY swag, or just want to show us some support, come and join our Discord. We got a wonderful community there.
Yeah.
Awesome people, like-minded brewers, just throwing ideas around all the time, and especially at the beginning of a new set, that's the perfect time to get in on the action. Patreon.com/faithlessbrewing. That's where you can go to sign up, and we'd love to see you there.
Yep, we've also got the Faithless Brewing YouTube, where these episodes go up. If your preferred podcast listening method is YouTube, you can do that there as well. And sometimes there's even other videos that get made and posted up there.
Sometimes. Not for a while now, but sometimes, perhaps sometime soon there will be. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll figure out a way to do more of that. But one of the great things you can get from the Discord is meeting and greeting with some of your fabulous peers, because that's how I met Dr. Jiggy Wiggy. That's how I met Brian. That's how we started the Serum Visions podcast, and that's how I ended up going to Vegas. Because I was sharing a room with both Dr. Jiggy Wiggy and someone else from the Discord, Texas Toph. Shout out to you, Toph. You're a cool guy. It was great to meet you. So split the accommodations. That was nice. I flew into Vegas on the Thursday. On the Friday was the sort of outside start of the event. So we went, got our badges, and then it started properly the next day with all sorts of different events. So there was a huge game nights broadcast happening on the main stage. So they played a big game of Commander, recorded all that. And then there were panels throughout the weekend that you could just go freely and watch different departments from Wizards talking about different things. The state of paper, Aaron Forsyth was up there talking about that. They had a whole bunch of people from their world design and lore teams fielding questions from the audience. So that all that stuff, really, really cool. Mark Rosewater's talk was excellent. He's just such a great part of that team, and all his energy. Really, really, I think it's been like a big battery to help Magic be as alive and vibrant as it is. But that's not what I was there for. I was there to play for a potential spot in the beta draft. So there were 4 tournaments with, 244 players each? Dan, it was some very strange number. 224?
Yeah, I believe so. 256 maybe. No, 224 sounds right.
It wasn't 256, because that was the logical number. And they didn't do that. Anywho, so each of those 4 flights, let's call them, the top 8 would feed into a 32-player event, single elimination, and then the top 8 of that would get to participate in a booster draft. The deck I took, as I alluded to, was Prison Tron. I'd been doing spectacularly with it online, and I felt very confident about that. And a lot of players wouldn't quite know how to play around it.
So let me ask you, Zach, those events, like, as I was looking at the sheet of events, like, oh, that's the main event because I'm a Modern player. But when you were there, did it feel like a main event, or was it just like one of the things happening in the hall?
It was just one of the things happening in the hall. Another thing that was happening was Worlds.
Right.
The whole weekend, Worlds was going on. So that was it was actually opposite. So if you were to go to one side of the hall, that's where they had the main stage. Behind that was the merch area. And then if you went all the way to the other side, like probably 400 feet, like the opposite end of the convention hall, there was a setup with the sort of broadcasting area with the desk. That's where you saw Corey Baumeister and Alias V and all those people doing their broadcast. And behind them was several banks of computers where everyone was playing for the arena portions of Worlds, and then it was all held over there. They actually had a screen nearby that you could watch the live Twitch feed of Worlds, even though it was happening right behind that. The oddest thing about it for me was there was literally no audio. So I made the comment at the time, and I stick by it. I'm really annoyed that like the people who were physically the closest, who traveled the furthest to be at that event, had the worst possible kind of viewing experience of it. I don't get that at all. There was almost no drive for people to watch any of it at all at any point. It was just like a thing that was happening that was over there, you know. It was, I don't know, it was very strange.
So it was a proper esports setup with like terminals facing each other, and
yeah,
everyone's just clicking away.
There just wasn't any
headsets on.
There wasn't any when there was a feature match going on, which was a thing that was happening. The actual physical people there couldn't participate in any way. It's like if you went to a stadium and there was a soccer game going on, but everyone had to stay in the area with like the restaurants. You know how that's like under the seats? Like you couldn't actually go to the seats.
But yeah, they got TVs out there.
Yeah, but they got TVs in the bars,
watch what's
right?
happening
So it's like you
can
watch it while you're in line for your Burger King or your, $29 hot dog.
But you can feel the thrumming of excitement in
right. Yeah, I mean the
shakes.
game is happening somewhere in the same building as you. Isn't that exciting? So a lot of people said to me like, "Oh, but then the crowd's gonna give away all and I was like, you know what? There has to be a way to make that. Like I don't. Games like League of Legends and Defense of the Ancients have Dota have hidden information. There's a thing called Fog of War where the teams can't see each other unless they can see each other, like on the map. Like they managed to do it. How can we not? Anyway.
I actually had no idea that that's what Dota stood for. Thank you for that. Now I don't have to ask.
It doesn't anymore. It's kind of like how KFC officially changed to KFC. They're no longer Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's just KFC. It technically stands for that, but it doesn't anymore. Like, that's just their company name. Anywho, so that was going on.
Well, think about this, Zach. Think about this. You ended up witnessing the end of the Magic esports era. I mean, that's something. Because if I understand correctly, Huey Jensen confirmed that Worlds going forward will be in paper, and I believe that the Pro Tours are also going to be tabletop starting next year. So this could have been the very last esports tournament.
I know he was there, and I know they were talking about that at some point. And I am overjoyed to hear that. I really am. I think that's where Magic belongs, is on tabletop, being played with paper cards.
Can I ask you one other question about the event as a whole?
Yeah.
Like many Magic fans and NASCAR fans, I often am just watching for the crashes now.
Right.
Watching for the scandals and the drama. One of the things that was going around on Twitter on the first day, which I don't know if this actually, you felt this as an attendee, but people were saying there's not nearly enough space. Like people have to stand in the hallway to get a game. There's no room at all to play. Uploading pictures of the command zone, which was totally empty, but you couldn't buy a ticket to the command zone because they said it was sold out. So people were just showing up and unable to get a proper game except in their hotel room. Is that true, or was that just Twitter hype?
So the command zone was there. It was not full. Those were all facts. It was not full of people because I'm assuming the people who bought their actual tickets for that were milling about. There were some people playing in there, and it got better over the weekend. Like, I think a lot of the people who bought their tickets for that showed up on Saturday and then stayed Saturday, Sunday. There was an ungodly amount of table space in that hall in general that you could just go and play at. And then if an official event was launching and assigned to that spot, you'd have to move. But there was more than enough. So it was color-coded. So they had the white section, the black section, the blue section, the red section, the green section, and I think they had one extra color. So if you picked a section that wasn't going to be used, so like limited events were all in like the blue section, and all those high stakes modern events were in like the black section, for example. So if you just picked one of those colors that wasn't being used, there was tons of tables you could play at.
Okay, that's good.
I know Saffron Olive had some kind of comment about how there was no tables and they had to play outside. The tables outside were really nice, and actually the weather was great for it all weekend. The only problem was at night, where when the sun went down and there was no light for them to play with. So that was not the greatest thing ever. But I mean, it was like the average GP to me, where it's just like there's more tables than are being used pretty much all the time. Just you can just find a spot. I wasn't looking for one, so I didn't notice a lack of it. But it seemed fine to me. It seemed like it was a little blown out of proportion.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
Glad to hear from someone who was there firsthand.
Yeah, the tricky thing for me was because I only had a ticket for one event, but I was there for 3 days of convention. They said that there were going to be a limited number of on-demand events. On the first day, there were basically none. The second and third day, they had some like Mystery Booster and some Unfinity, but no constructed events were fired on demand, and there were no additional constructed events to play in person. So that was a little disappointing, but it is what it is.
Maybe you didn't demand hard enough.
Yeah.
You actually have to like demand it. You have to like stand outside the registration booth and chant angrily.
Yes, yeah, maybe I should. I should have stood there and tweeted angrily.
That's it. That's what you should have done. Well, before I forget, I mean, how did the event go? So did you end up walking away with any Legends packs or perhaps Italian Legends packs?
So I didn't, although a friend of the podcast and Yog Noda fan Darshik sure did. He played in one of the events, and he managed to get 2 packs of Italian Legends that were mailed to him or will be mailed to him because apparently they miscounted the number of packs that they brought to the event, and they didn't have enough to give away on site, so they will be mailed to him.
Right now, someone is frantically rummaging around that warehouse trying to dig up some more Italian Legends.
Oh, no! I think it was just that they didn't bring enough from Seattle down to Vegas. But for me, I started out 2-0, beat Black-Red Scam mid-range thing, beat Murktide. Then I lost to Burn in typical me fashion. And then I conceded to someone. We went to time. He was playing the 4-color or the blue-white Ren and 6 control deck. We went to time. I managed to make it to time without losing, but he had his Fairy Emblem. I was definitely going to lose that game. So I just conceded. I don't have that kind of killer instinct. And 2-1-1, trying to win out on the day, I just gave it to the other guy. He seemed to have a great attitude, had a good deck. And then the judge came up to get his signature afterwards. So apparently he was a known human being, but I don't know who it was. But very nice human, great Magic player.
That man? Albert Einstein.
Yeah. And that boy grew up to be Albert Einstein. No, anyway. So that was my event. I feel very strongly about Prisontron. Last week I made a top 8 at a paper 1K here in Toronto.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. It was good.
You've been putting up awesome results. You went 14-2 in some leagues last week.
My Magic Online result with Prisontron right now is somewhere around 35-5. It's insane.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Wow.
It's very, very, very good against Black Red and Murktide because Chalice on 1 is very, very powerful, and Ensnaring Bridge they have very few answers for, and nothing in your deck is that expensive. So when you get Blood Mooned, usually you just cast a bridge, cast a Mystic Forge. Eventually, you find enough lands, and you'll win with Karn or just Walking Ballista.
Well, enjoy that success. Haywire Might is coming for you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not petrified of it, but it's definitely going to give some of these decks a better game 1 out. Although Karn still shuts it down, so there's counterplay. But there's also cards coming to improve the Prisontron deck, so I guess that's a pretty natural segue. Just final thoughts on MTG30. It was an amazing event for me as a human being. Just to go there to finally meet Arun. That's Dr. Jiggy Wiggy, Darshik, and Texas Toph. Both of those people from the Discord, fabulous human beings. And for some reason, none of them had evening plans, choices of things they wanted to do after the event. So I got to pick almost all of those. So Darshik made the joke at one point. He's like, I think we went to 3 tiki places in 3 days. And I was like, yeah, but they were all different. So I got to explore the kaleidoscope of different Vegas styles of things. We had some good pictures from that.
You can take the boy out of the cruise, but you can't take the cruise out of the boy. Still living that tiki life.
Well, the funny thing about it is it's like an American generated style. So it's like, but I guess it has a lot of elements from the Caribbean. And I'll tell you that Rune and I on the last night had the greatest pizza I have ever had in my life. I didn't know Detroit style pizza was such a thing. It is.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah,
Detroit style?
It's kind of like Chicago deep dish, but it's different. I don't know exactly how, although I was reading an article about it this week because I have to make it for myself at some point soon because it was so freaking good. I'm not even a big pineapple on pizza guy, but Arun was like, first one we're getting is this one. It's pineapple on pizza with ham. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And it was one of the best things I have ever eaten. I just can't. It was so good. So good.
I can't do pineapple on pizza. That's a sin.
I used to feel the same way. I used to feel the same way. And now I'm questioning my identity. I had an experience in Vegas, and, I could go with whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, or maybe I'm, transitioning to a point in my life where I'm pineapple positive.
Oh, God. Okay, on that note, let's take a look at some cards.
We're gonna talk about our top 5 most impactful pizza toppings.
Exactly. These are the pizza toppings that will either improve Prison-tron or totally destroy it.
And also the modern format at large.
I got my top 5 for Modern, top 5 for Pioneer, top 5 that I'm personally excited to brew with, and just for fun, a little section on overrated cards, top 5 overrated.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
So I'll go through the lists, and Zach, you can heckle me, tell me how crazy I am. Weigh in on these cards and help set the record straight, because I know you weren't able to record with us during the proper preview shows.
Yeah, well, I will heckle and jekyll to my heart's desire.
So let's start in Modern. Top 5 most impactful, and what I mean by this is, when the dust has settled a few months down the road, will the Brothers' War have affected your life in any way whatsoever? Will you still be seeing these cards played in Modern tournaments near you? Number 1 card in this respect, Haywire Might. Very simple card. 1 mana, 1/1 insect. When it dies, you gain 2 life, and its activated ability, pay a green, sack it, exile a non-creature artifact or enchantment. So, primarily an Urza Saga target. You can also put it in your Karn Wishboard. It's a card that I think, everyone understands that this is cheaper than the current alternatives. Pretty easy to include this, especially now that Leyline Binding is so prevalent in the metagame. That, yeah, I think you should expect to see some number of Haywire Mights going forward.
Absolutely. Very likely to be a staple, especially with Urza Saga still being a widely played card. Might see some of the Hammer Time decks splash into green for just this, or potentially for more. I don't know what else they would want from that, but it's going to be definitely something that is a little staple of your toolbox decks.
Number 2, I was actually struggling here to find cards that are impactful in Modern. I think that this card is going to be good, but I could be totally wrong. Number 2, I have the Stone Brain.
I also think it's going to be good, so with experience of the archetype, I'm fairly certain this is another toolbox staple.
So we're talking about the Stone Brain, a colorless Necromentia Unmoored effect. It's 2 to cast, 2 to activate. Name any card, search their deck for up to 4 copies of that card. And then if any of the cards that you exile that way were from their hand, they get to draw a card to replace it. So very, very similar to Unmoored Ego. Because it's an artifact, you can put it in your Karn Wishboard. So I think that's maybe how Zach is approaching this. But I'm curious if just generic decks that didn't have access to black might find that they actually want to use the Stone Brain as just a fair sideboard card. Like, if you really can't beat creativity, or you can't think of any sideboard card for it, sure, throw some Stone Brains in your sideboard and hope for the best.
It's certainly possible. And I mean, for decks like any of the control decks in Modern, for example, blue-white or the domain blue-white or whatever they are, being able to pay for it in installments is often kind of important. You play 2 on the front, and if it gets countered, you only paid 2. You didn't have to pay the full 3 or 4.
Yeah, that's a great point. And something I didn't really appreciate when we were first talking about the card, but Yeah, you look at it and it's like, oh, it's 4 mana total, so it's got to be worse than Necromentia, which is 3. But actually, it's probably better, right? Like, it's better to just pay 2 and 2 for the exact reason you just said.
I mean, it can be. It certainly can be. Certainly can be. There's certainly going to be situations where that is ideal. It's easier to play this on turn 3 and hold up a Spell Pierce or something like that.
And are you putting the Stone Brain into your Karn Witchboard?
110%. And I think I'm going to start off when the new set comes out with one in the main deck as well. With Prisantron, you can fetch it with Inventor's Fair, and it's also just not always going to be a terrible natural draw if you know your opponent's deck list well enough.
All right, the third most impactful card in Modern. I mean, we're already reaching here. I'm putting Scrapwork Mutt, a very minor upgrade for red-based Vengevine decks. It will take them from tier 3 all the way up to tier 2.5, possibly tier 2.
Is this Anthony Menino's new best card in Modern? I think it might be the best card in Modern.
It may be. I mean, it's a card that's, you know, you look at it, it's 2 to cast, ETB Rummage, and it unearths for 2 for 1 in a red for another Rummage. Very, very similar to Rotting Rats, except that instead of your opponent discarding, you get to draw a card. Shifts things over to red where you have, you know, exciting options like Blazing Rootwalla, Ox of Agonis. There's a lot of good reasons to play like a red-based Vengevine deck, but without access to the zombie package, it's like a different configuration. So I think that Scrapwork Mutt is a clear upgrade for that strategy specifically, and, you know, for that reason alone, I think it will at least make an impact.
Yeah, and I had someone else mention there's a blue one that's, I think, part of basically the same cycle. Hold on, let me get the card.
Combat Courier.
Combat Courier.
That's the one you're thinking of?
Yes, Combat Courier. I think you maybe were the one who mentioned that, but these are both cards that can get milled into the graveyard and exist there for value in a way that is just prone to being broken, let's say.
Yeah, I like cheap unearth effects. There's Combat Courier. There's a one called Yoshin Frontrunner. That's like a little more aggressive. I don't know what to do with these cards yet, but I like the fact that they exist.
I'm just jumping down to our Pioneer section and seeing that they're not mentioned. So just so we know, for the Dredgeless Dredge decks, I don't know that they need more ways to trigger Prize Amalgam, but food for thought.
Oh, and Pioneer.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So number 4 on my Modern most impactful list, and again, this is a bit of a reach, I'm putting Phyrexian Dragon Engine, one of the early previews. This is a card that you'll put 1x for your Goblin Engineer to find. 2/2 double strike for 3, unearths for 5. When it comes into play from your graveyard, you have the option to do the Ox of Agonis thing, discard your hand, draw 3. Kind of interesting that they make it optional, so if you really don't want to discard your hand, you don't have to. Nice that because it costs 3, you can just return it with Goblin Engineer's tap ability. You can return it with Unearth or Recommission if you're in Pioneer. Can't return it with Emery because that won't satisfy the condition, but I think between all of that, you know, it's still enough to earn some play as a 1x, and the effect is very powerful.
Yeah, definitely looks like a fine little creature.
Like, let's say that you're in Modern and you've got some kind of deck that maybe you're trying to reanimate Archon of Cruelty or something like that, but you're also playing Goblin Engineer, so it's not the end of the world to persist the Dragon Engine just to draw cards.
No, and Goblin Engineer with a history of being able to just sit there and generate value if it's not killed.
And rounding out the top 5, I have Third Path Iconoclast. This is Young Pyromancer, but in Izzet colors, and the tokens it generates are Artifact Soldiers. I'm not a huge believer in this card, but it's cheap, it does what it says. We know how to enable cards like this. Because the tokens it generates are artifacts, I mean, if you wanted to pair it with Urza Saga, you could. I think that the home that people are considering in Modern is, well, what about Grinding Breach? Right? Like, it's kind of a juke plan there. We've seen them play Monastery Mentor in ancient iterations. Sometimes they play Saheeli Sublime Artificer. There is like a weird combo you can do where if you have Breach and Station and some 0-drop and the Third Path Iconoclast in play, you end up milling both players equal amounts. So that, in theory, kills them without the need for Thassa's Oracle, but I think that probably isn't a huge factor, because why not just kill them with Thassa's Oracle?
Well, more importantly, if you're too far into your own deck first, like if you only have 20 cards left and your opponent still has 40,
Yeah,
that it doesn't work.
correct.
You cannot kill them that way. But that said, I do believe that this card has a lot of potential. I like it a lot. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Urza decks in general, but this being a 2-cost non-legendary creature, Psy is a card that doesn't see a lot of play, but is actually quite powerful. Like, if you've ever resolved it in the modern format with any number of artifacts to play afterwards, it is very, very good. And obviously, Psy has some other text and creates flying tokens. But I think this is the kind of thing that shouldn't be underestimated. And time will tell whether or not it actually finds a slot. But it being at 2 mana is big game.
Okay, so those are my top 5 most impactful for Modern. A few that narrowly missed honorable mentions, we could say. Diabolic Intent. I actually put this on my overrated list, so we'll talk about this card at greater length there, but I do have to acknowledge that people are trying this. Aspiring Spike tested it out today. He said he got a couple 4-1s. Not sure if he actually thinks the card is good or not, but I gotta hand it to him. He's finding some success with the card, so it's entirely possible that I am wrong about Diabolic Intent, but I do think it's overrated.
I have some ideas for it that don't look terrible. So I'm interested to see what we can do with that. I think it's a classic Dan take of, you can't just put this in any established deck and expect it to be better than what they have. It's not going to do that. It doesn't belong in Yawgmoth. It doesn't belong in Red-Black. There's lots of decks that exist already. This does not belong in. But you have to, if you jump through a couple of hoops, it might be worth doing.
Yeah, part of the reason that I put it in the overrated section was because as I was browsing to see what people were saying about this, almost everything that people were proposing sounded terrible to me.
I agree.
But Spike's list sounded good. So I'm like, okay, he's approaching this from from the ground up.
Right.
And I think he's onto something there. So
yeah.
Maybe this will turn out to be an important card in Modern.
My personal belief is that it might work in some kind of blue-black or Esper Urza deck, because there are so many different combos you can have in a deck like that, and they don't all involve creatures, specifically Thopter Sword, but you can also fetch something like Hullbreaker Horror or whatever you need.
Another card that almost made the cut, Machine Over Matter. We actually didn't talk about this one. It's 1 in a blue instant to bounce any permanent. However, you get a discount. If you control an artifact creature, it only costs blue, and at that point, it's the cheapest bounce anything effect in the entire game of Magic. Do you think that that is a desirable effect? Like, if I were playing, I don't know, Affinity, would I want access to that 1 blue bounce anything?
With Leyline Binding being the format now, maybe. But obviously they get to replay it again. It's a very niche card, but it's one that we shouldn't forget about. There's a similar ish card in that it's very good. It's a single blue to bounce a creature or enchantment. Is that right? And that sees play occasionally.
That one I think only bounces the opponent's creatures or enchantments.
True.
The Stern Dismissal.
Yeah.
But this one can bounce your own Thought Monitor, for example. So it's like a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure, but it's certainly something to remember that it exists. And it is important for decks like that because, again, bouncing someone's Stony Silence for a turn or otherwise can be a game-breaking card to play.
True. Another near miss for me is Combat Thresher. This is the prototype double strike creature that draws a card when it ETBs. Pretty cheap to cast it as a prototype. It's only 3 mana to get your 1/1 double strike cantrip. 7 to cast as a 3/3 double strike. These are not overwhelming stats, but this is maybe the only prototype card that actually encourages you to blink it, that doesn't punish you for cheating it into play. Right? Most of the other ones have if you cast it clause, so there's like no incentive to do anything tricky with them. Combat Thresher, I could almost see it. It's like not quite powerful enough, but it's not that bad.
I'm a huge fan of this card. Huge fan. It's very fair, but if you have a way to exploit it, it's exploitable. I don't know what else is, and it's a white card that's just like reasonably costed that says draw a card when it enters the battlefield. Like, I think it's great. I think this is a great little card. I don't know if it's good enough, but it's cool. I'm a big fan of it. Yeah, I don't know what else there is to say about it other than I like it a lot.
And finally, rounding out the modern honorable mentions, Brotherhood's End. I think most people evaluating this card for modern would say it's worse than Engineered Explosives. If you want the flexibility of killing creatures or artifacts, which is what Brotherhood's End offers you, why not just use EE? And one of the answers to that is, well, let's say you're an Obosh red deck. Like, yeah, you're happy to have this now in your sideboard. So for that reason alone, I think you'll see this card cast some of the time.
Yeah, it's a very interesting split card with the sort of, let's say, Shatterstorm half. Obviously, it's not Shatterstorm, but it's close. Although it doesn't hit any of their large casting cost artifacts if you're playing against like an actual affinity deck. But it will wipe out all of Hammer Time's equipment, basically, except for the Cauldra and all their constructs. And on the flip side, it's, what do we call it? Like an Anger of the Gods effect, but it doesn't have the Exile. So the trick for me is, like, if Affinity's popular, you need a better card than this. And if Dredge is popular, you need a better card than this. So it's flexible, and I like this card a lot. I just don't know if it's ever actually going to be the card you need, because I think Modern so often puts you in the spot where it's like, no, you need the specific effect, and the ways in which this is medium on both sides are actually very punishing sometimes.
Choices are overrated in Modern these days. We want cards that efficiently say kill anything you want, no questions asked.
Well, or things that are very specifically targeted and very powerful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this really isn't either of those things. However, 100% gonna be 5-0, 4 copies in my Ashi sideboard. 100%. It will happen. It might even be main deck.
All right, so from Modern, we jump now to the top 5 most impactful for Pioneer. For Pioneer, we need a little bit of outside help. Who better than our guy in Buenos Aires? Emmy Sagasti, you know him as More to Light. Emmy, welcome.
Heyo, thanks, Dan. I mean, who better? The answer, of course, would be David.
Yeah, I was trying to get a little fake out there. You have to pretend to be David. Do your David impersonation.
Oh, sorry, everybody. Yeah, then, so we're going to Pioneer. Where, of course, the most important card will be a Grixis medium. What is the mediumest of your cards?
I should say David bears no responsibility for anything stupid I say on this episode. These are just my rankings, for which I invite Mord to now join Zach in heckling me. Let's take a look at the top 5 most impactful for Pioneer, and I'm going to start off with a safe choice. A coward's choice, David might say. Number 1 most impactful card for Pioneer is Brushland / Underground River. These are the allied paid lands, which are new to the format. For some reason in Pioneer, we still don't have allied fast lands. So if you want to play, like, you know, your Llanowar Elf deck and a second color, you're kind of forced to choose from janky lands. We've seen what a big difference the Karplusan Forest made in the last set, right? It finally made these green-red aggro decks feel like not embarrassing. So I'm assuming that Brushland will do the same thing for green-whites, and perhaps in a lesser way, Underground River for blue-black.
Yeah, I'm very excited to just have that closed up. And yes, it's a very safe choice, but you know what? We gotta congratulate Wizards for just doing the thing. Yay! You did the thing. You didn't make us wait.
Exactly.
Finally did the thing. Just give us Fastlands now.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question. I mean, how many times have they said we can't reprint the Fastlands because there's specific locations on Mirrodin?
Yeah.
We know we're going to Phyrexia in like 2 sets.
Right.
Are we going to see them there?
I hope so, but also, and I just want to be very clear on this. Yes, you can. All right? They put Dragon Skull Summit on Ixalan, and they had a flavor text that explained that there are no such things as dragons on Ixalan, but some people call the dinosaurs dragons, and that's okay. Like, what?
That was very funny.
None of the... I don't... It's, you can do it. You can do it. Just do it. You're smart people. You can do this. I don't get it. Black Cleave. Yeah, the cliffs. Yeah, they're sharp. So we call them Cleave and they're black. The Razor Venge Thicket, is that the one? It's like, oh yeah, the grass.
Razor Verge.
Yeah, Razor Verge. Oh, it's not actually made of razors. It's just kind of stiff grass. It's like getting a paper cut. So we called it the Razor. I mean, it's not actually razors. Sea Chrome Coast. Yeah, we call it chrome because there's a kind of metal in the rocks and it's kind of metallic looking.
The sand can be metallized. Like it's not uncommon for sand to be shiny and reflective.
Right.
So.
And it's not uncommon for there to be metal like in rock, like little bits of like shiny filament. So it's just such a terrible excuse in my opinion.
So I think it's the other way around. I think they have been using that as an excuse because for the last 2 years they have already known they're going to put that in Mirrodin.
Right.
So it's like, no, we can do it. We have to do it in Mirrodin. It's not we have to. It's we have already done it.
Right. But it's just so annoying for the Pioneer format to have to suffer through that waiting area.
Oh yeah, that sucks. It slows the format so much. It has printed in like a corset. Give me something weird.
Right. It's like when Modern had to go through several years of there being only enemy fetch lands. It's like, wait, what? Yep, that's... Mm-hmm.
All right, so apart from the pain lands, which actual spells are going to make an impact in Pioneer? It was tough to choose because, the sets these days, they have a lot of cards that could make a difference. I think we do a pretty good job on this podcast of identifying cards that will be useful, that will be playable. It's a lot harder to gauge, like, how strong the resulting decks will be, and so often, like, the final rankings I propose end up sounding laughable. The same thing will probably happen here. Like, this next card here, which I'm listing as my number 2 card, Evangel of Synthesis. I believe in this card. The decks that it will create, how good will they be? I really have no idea, but I believe that what Evangel of Synthesis brings to the table, wow, Evangel of Synthesis. Why do I keep putting this card in?
Evangel of Synthesis.
I can't pronounce this.
Why do we keep using that word? We should ban the S word from the podcast.
Whoa, easy there. Synthesizers are great. You just need to...
Exactly.
You just needed to be familiar.
This is not a
You just needed to be familiar with the word from a younger age, and it's just messing with you because you never learned to say it right the first time.
Synthesis.
That's it. Yeah. So the Evangel, it's basically a Rafine's Informant with more upside. It doesn't die to Stomp. It has some serious aggressive potential. Can attack as a 3/3 menace. It's somewhere between Rafine's Informant and Ledger Shredder. Rafine's Informant, okay, that's not like a world-beating card, but it is a staple in several archetypes. Will Evangel lead to Esper Greasefang? Can you just pair it with Ledger Shredder and play Dimir midrange? Maybe we go back to those Rafine Connive aggro decks. I think that this is going to be a useful tool and just an impressive card overall, even though it's definitely like very medium in its power band.
Yeah, I like it. David's already got a couple of brews that he showed us with this card, and I also think it's pretty medium, but then again, as long as you're taking advantage of the draw discard, if there's something that you want in your graveyard, it's fine. Blue-black as a color combination, I'm not convinced that you want a 3/3 menace, even if it's only 2 mana, but
Yeah, the biggest problem with this card is on its colors in being exactly Dimir.
Right, if it was blue-white, it might be a little bit better.
Oh, yeah.
If it was an artifact, then we're talking.
But nevertheless, it's cheap and it does what it says, so I think we will see this card making an impact.
It's a cheap, efficient threat.
The next card, number 3 in Pioneer, Cityscape Leveler. There's a lot of cards in this set that you can imagine putting them in a Karn Wishboard. We talked about Haywire Might, we talked about the Stone Brain. Mord, you were suggesting that Woodcaller Automaton might be the card that, breaks Karn and Pioneer because of the ritual effect. So I feel like one of those cards should make the top 5 list, and I'm going to give that thought to Cityscape Leveler, because I think that in addition to being a viable Karn target, like Mord, you were suggesting it replaces Meteor Golem, it's also just like a very, very powerful card, and I didn't really process this at the time. Like David just in passing mentioned, what if it's good enough to just ramp to Cityscape Leveler? And the more I thought about that, the more I'm like, yeah, why not? I mean, it's like a small Ulamog. It's a cast trigger for 8, destroy one thing, an attack trigger, destroy another thing, so it's almost got more upside there. If it gets countered, you get to unearth it, so you are kind of guaranteed value if you mill it with Cavalier of Thorns, like in the green ramp deck that we sometimes we'll see in Pioneer that splashes for Dragon Rototarka on the top. Maybe Cityscape Leveler is just good enough.
You also still get the cast trigger if it gets countered, so that's pretty good as well.
You will. You'll get the cast trigger and you'll get the Unearth. So you'll get 2 permanents, 8 damage potentially. I mean, is this card good enough even for consideration in Modern Tron?
I don't think so, because in Modern Tron it's really important to be able to hit your opponent's lands when necessary, and this doesn't. Like when your opponent is playing a slow deck, the way you win is by going for the lands with Karn, Ulamog, etc. Even little Karn,
Liquid metal coating.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I do think this isn't the worst ever substitute for something like Meteor Golem. So if you're going to go that route of Meteor Golem, 7 mana, 3/3, when it enters the battlefield, destroy target permanent. If that's a card you've ever considered, if that's a card you've ever registered, then Cityscape Leveler is, in some ways, a serious upgrade on that.
Yeah, another thing that commonly happens in Pioneer is they'll play a Karn, they'll downtick, they'll get Sky Sovereign. You, on your turn, are like, oh my gosh, I gotta kill that Karn, and you throw your resources at it and kill it, and then the game continues. And then they have a Sky Sovereign that they eventually just kill you with, because it's actually not that easy to kill a big threat. So Cityscape Leveler, in a similar way, if they just downtick and get the Cityscape Leveler, you gotta kill a Karn, and then you still have to beat the Leveler later in the game, which is not that easy. It's easier said than done. This guy's huge.
Yep. 8/8 trample is just that is a body.
All right, number 4, most impactful for Pioneer, Arcane Proxy. And I'm putting this here out of deference to David, our Pioneer expert. He loves this card. He said it would be a top 5 card in the set. I don't quite see it. Like, I actually have this on my overrated list, but I'm also putting it here because despite being overrated, he might be right.
The Lily of the Veil effect.
Yeah.
It's playable, just not as playable as people wanted it to.
I mean, if it's any good, it's because of the interaction with See the Truth, which lets you draw 3 cards for the low price of 3 mana. That's kind of like Shardless Agent into Ancestral Visions. So we're like doing Legacy now, I guess. That would be the ceiling. I'm not sure what the floor is for Arcane Proxy, so we'll have to see on that. And in my 5th spot, I wanted to put a black card. There are several to choose from. We talked about Go for the Throat, we talked about Gix, we talked about the equipment, the Transmogrant's Crown, but the card that I like best of all of them is the Blade Whip Transmogrant, the 3/1 zombie that comes back sometimes from the graveyard. Mainly because it's a zombie, and I am curious if this will help zombies be like a little bit more of a presence in Pioneer.
I think it's not only these, but the accumulation of all the small upgrades they're getting, right?
I hope so. I mean, all these cards feel like upgrades, but the archetype itself has been so lackluster lately that maybe it's like, we're just wasting our time.
Yeah, it's a lot of upgrades. The question is, are all these enough? Leaks, Geeks, Crown. I hope it does. I love the archetype.
All right, those are my top 5 for Pioneer. Some cards that just missed the cuts. Third Path Iconoclast, we talked about it in Modern. You can also do it in Pioneer. We see more Young Pyromancers played in Pioneer. Is there like an 8 PZ deck in Pioneer? I'm not sure, but if there is, there is your Third Path Iconoclast. Similarly, Diabolic Intent, putting it as an honorable mention here because Sacrifice decks, which is, I think, the only realistic home for this card, at least Sacrifice is a thing in Pioneer. That's a known strategy. We don't have to invent it from scratch like Aspiring Spike did yesterday in Modern. You could conceivably, have a Rakdos Sack deck in Pioneer and upgrade it somehow with Diabolic Intent getting sideboard bullets, maybe. And finally, Audacity. This is the Rancor variant. It's a pretty boring card for what is ultimately a boring deck, just a green-white hexproof. But it's a clean upgrade there, so, we should at least acknowledge it here.
I think Transmogrant's Crown deserves a mention somewhere here. I feel like it's definitely not a piece of equipment that it's going to be good enough for Modern, but this is the quote-unquote fixed Skull Clamp.
Really fixed Skull Clamp.
Yeah, well, by the way, when someone says fixed Skull Clamp, I expected it to draw 2 cards, and it doesn't. So That's a whole thing.
Exactly. That's what I mean. It's like super fixed.
Yeah, we were talking about it the other day, by the way. The reason that Skullclamp draws 2 cards was not a mistake in terms of execution, because it was specifically made as an homage to Bequeathal, which was an aura, which the point of the aura was...
You're kidding.
No, this is on Mark Rosewater's podcast at some point. He was one of the people who designed Skullclamp. The people who were in charge of balancing the cards were the ones who broke it by making it +1/-1. But it was meant to be an homage to Bequeathal, and nobody ever asked the question, well, with Bequeathal, the point of it was that when your creature and your aura die, that's why you draw 2 cards. And nobody said, the equipment doesn't die. That's the point of equipment. Why are we drawing 2 cards? It should be 1. Nobody asked that question. Instead, someone was like, +1/+1. Nah, +1/-1. That's cute.
Amazing stuff.
Maybe instead of flavor text, we're supposed to add the line "sacrifice Skullclamp."
Yeah, could be. It kind of makes sense, right? Flavorfully. Anywho, so Transmogrift's Crown might be good enough for Pioneer as well. And just an honorable mention, because it's right next to it for me, is Arms Race. Just because it's almost...
Really?
Just because it's almost... Listen, I have big dreams sometimes.
Why?
And in my head, the activated cost of this is a single red mana because it's sneak attack. So I don't think we talked about it.
How is that in your dreams? Tell me on your dreams.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying it's one of those things where I started reading this and then I read it and I went, so this activates for a single red, right? It doesn't. But it's just one of those things where I see it and I go, I have big dreams. I don't know what you want to put into play with this thing.
4 to cast, 4 to activate, sneak attack for artifacts.
Correct. If you put in a portal to Phyrexia at the end of your opponent's turn, they would sacrifice 3 permanents, 3 creatures, and you would get a reanimation effect on your turn.
Okay.
I'm just saying that there are gross things you can do with this, right? Put in a Sundering Titan. You get to destroy 10 lands up to.
Did we put Portal to Phyrexia or it was even mentioned in Impactful in Modern?
We did not. It might be.
Okay.
No, it is on my overrated list. If that's what, we could talk about it there. So stay tuned for that.
Well, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there, but before we do, we've got a list of most excited to brew.
Yeah, so we talked about the good cards, the most impactful cards. Now let's talk about the nonsense. These are the cards that excite me personally, and I'm curious to hear what cards you would have on your personal lists. For me, I mean, no surprise, I've mentioned these already, but number 1, Drafna, founder of Latnam. Get yourself a Kinnan, get yourself a Mox Amber, and you can just start looping all the way to Combo Town. All you need is any 4th piece of your choice, and with these 4 pieces in place, you'll be unstoppable. What is that 4th piece? Is it Teething Wormlet? Is it Altar of the Brood? Is it the Sarinth Steelseeker? Who knows? But I love Draft Now. I love how cheap it is, and I love how it's just like, hey, do you want a combo? Let's try it.
It's just a card that screams combo.
Right. And I'm a fan of all these things because they all work into the same Hullbreaker Horror Mox Amber deck.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's another piece of the puzzle. We're getting there. We're getting there, Dan.
Exactly. Even Draft is like a 2-mana Hullbreaker Horror. How about that? There's a hot take.
Whoa! Whoa!
It does the same thing as Hullbreaker
Slow down.
Horror for just 2 mana.
Slow down.
So 1 mana Hullbreaker Horror, that's the new take? That's what we're going for?
Exactly. Number 2, I have Scrapwork Mutt, a card that I also think is the 3rd most impactful card in Modern. So yeah, I gotta put my money where my mouth is. I will be building said Vengevine deck. Similarly, Phyrexian Dragon Engine, that's also on the list of cards I'm very excited for because, I love the Ox of Agonis. So I'm definitely going to be working on Scrapwork Mutt and Phyrexian Dragon Engine. 4th on my personal list, Mord, you and David pegged it exactly right. The Sarinth Steelseeker, the 1 in a green Squire. Anytime an artifact ETBs for you, you get to explore for, well, it's not quite explore. You look
Explore
Oh,
at your top
without
card.
the +1/+1 counter.
That's it, yeah. So if it's a land on top of your deck, you get the land. If it's anything else, you can surveil it away if you want to. What do you do with that? I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll start with like a green-black Asmo food deck and just see what happens. That makes a lot of artifacts and likes having stuff in the graveyard, so it might be like a little too dirtily, but it's too irresistible for me to just ignore it. And rounding out my top 5, the Perennial Behemoth. Weird little card. It's like, what, 2/7, is that right, for 5? Lets you play lands from the graveyard?
Yeah, it's a 2/7.
It's a Ramunap Excavator, yeah, but it has Unearth for GG. Unearth for GG. So you can unearth it, play an extra land from your graveyard. So even right there on the Unearth, you're getting actual card advantage off the Unearth. Attack for 2, why not? You temporarily have this clunky artifact in play, which you can use for something if you want. I think David has a list that we'll talk about next show that tries to take advantage of that. I love game pieces like this that just have weird stats that ask you to do something a little sideways. I mean, how much time do we waste on Slogurk and self-mill lands packages? That's exactly what Perennial Behemoth is asking you to do as well. So I love the space this is playing in. I have no idea if it's good.
I also have a love for these kind of effects, and it's kind of cool to have a another artifact. This is an artifact creature that is Crucible, and that's interesting, rather than Ramunap Excavator or the lackluster Crucible itself.
Correct. All right, so that's my top 5, but what about you guys? I mean, you don't have to have a formal list, but other cards that are like, you're going to start on these cards first?
I mean, the first thing I want to do, I'm going to attempt it probably at least 2 leagues, is I want to do the achievement unlocked and meld Urza, Lord Protector, and the Mightstone and Weakstone. I just want to do it. I just want to have Urza Planeswalker in play in a game of Modern.
Okay.
So that's just to be like, that is the entire point of the deck, and I'm going to assume that at that point this card, which I really haven't read, is going to be good enough to win the game.
I don't think anybody has read the backside of Urza. Nobody knows what that card does.
No, I think if I start thinking, I can say it by heart. I think I know it.
Oh, more? Do you know the whole text?
What else? Okay, more. Do you have the rest of it? Do you have the rest of it? I'm looking at it now, so tell me.
No notes.
Tell me what he does.
No. So I think it is 8 mana CMC. It enters with 7, and you may activate twice. +2 reduces cost by 2, and you gain 1 life. +1, you'll draw 2 discard. All make 2 1/1 artifacts. -3, Vindicate. -10, destroy all non-land permanents, and your stuff gains indestructible.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
Wow.
Yep.
I have no way of verifying whether that's true or not. I have not read the back of the card.
I'm looking at the card right
Okay.
now. I can tell you that Mord has essentially gotten every single mode right. There's a few details that are not worth mentioning that he fudged, but
Yeah, there might be different points of life gain. I on some time I was like flying.
yeah. That doesn't. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. The point is that was basically correct, and I don't know if that's good enough to win a game, but I want to have it in play. I just want to do it. Mightstone Weakstone is an interesting card in and of itself, to me. So.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Why are we not getting Mishra into play?
Because Mishra sucks again. I'm really annoyed about it. I can't even begin to describe how annoyed I am that, like, once again Mishra's gotten not just one card but multiple cards, all of which are terrible. Although Mishra, Tamer of Makfawa, that gives each artifact card in your graveyard unearthed, that's pretty cool.
I mean, which is the Mishra with Mel? What did that one do?
Oh, it's a combat guy.
That one's like 3/5 for 4, I think, and when you attack, it drains.
Yeah, it drains equal to the number of attacking creatures. That's it.
Oh, okay.
It is a black-red like aggro card.
Okay, sucks. Okay,
yeah, like I'm so upset that there is not a Grixis artifact-themed Mishra that doesn't suck.
Yeah,
it's so frustrating.
If Ursa Planeswalker gets binding and remove the binding, I get back both cards separated.
Correct.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So I get my ETBs again. That's nice.
Yeah, although the one side of Urza doesn't have an ETB, but the Mightstone and Weakstone do.
No, but the Mightstone.
And yeah, that one has one where you're gonna, was it draw 2 probably or kill something?
Yeah.
And then you can just meld it again and just go again.
So Urza meld. What else is on your list?
My list is probably mostly just just big artifacts in general. So Portal to Phyrexia.
Big stuff.
Yeah. The Cityscape Leveler, I believe that was the name of it, right? Yep. And any of the other large artifacts that I've missed, just because they're sweet. Like, Third Path Iconoclast is going to be something that a lot of very good players are brewing with, and I just don't feel like I need to intrude on their space. I'll check out those decks once they have won the challenge with them.
You will fight your own battles.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's like, who else is going to, like, try to cast a Skitterbeam Battalion?
I love the battalion, though.
It's cool.
I kind of love casting that for prototype, and then that's 6 devotion right there. So if you have Torban in play, if you have NX Hardened by the Forge.
Yo, now we're talking.
Yeah, it's a more red devotion deck. That's a more red devotion card that's colorless.
It single-handedly turns on all of your red gods. Ragavan turn 1, Clothis turn 2, Skitterbeam Battalion turn 3. Does that work? And you attack with the Clothis. What are they going to do? They can't handle the Clothis in the red zone.
Now we're talking.
The thing is, it's really annoying to deal with those 3 idiots, and if 1 or 2 survive, the amount of devotion you will get is insane.
Right. Like,
you can ending them, you can do a lot of stuff to them.
I mean, that might be, fun enough to try. Fanatic Amogus, that's the one. It domes them for your devotion to
that's
red.
right.
That's the card.
Yeah, the 4-mana fortune.
And you could even play your, what is it, the shaman that doubles your shamans?
Oh, God.
With something prodigy?
No. You're lost in the sauce.
Yeah, we're lost in the sauce. But Mort, do you have any top picks for things that you want to brew with?
So, as the creatures guy in this Discord, because you're all fiercely combo players, and I have officially became a Goblin player over the past 48 hours, then you have not been watching my slow decline of Chestagobos player. I have played a lot of Goblins in the past 3 days. Zach has seen some of it.
And I've enjoyed every moment. I was just glad that it's one of the decks that I thought of when you were looking for a new one.
So I think the first thing I'm going to do is play the really bad Pioneer Elves deck that's trying to combo off the good old Dungeon Gwena combo.
The what combo?
Collected Company into Gwena plus a Cerac and tap with the game with any cost reducer.
Oh my god. No. No. Okay, so we deliberately did not talk about that card because I think it's garbage. But Gwena, 2 and a green, 2/3 taps for 2 mana to cast creatures. It also untaps itself whenever you cast a creature with power 5 or greater. Is that right?
Yeah, and you get a +1/+1 counter on it.
And then a Cerac, the Archlich, happens to have 5 power and happens to bounce itself to your hand. So all you need to do to make that go infinite is somehow reduce the cost of a Cerac by 1.
Oh god.
Which there are a bunch of ways to do.
You can play beautiful cards like Goreclaw.
No, but don't do this to yourself.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I mean, I'll watch you torture yourself.
No, don't do it.
I'm banking myself on the power of reducers for 2, which instead of giving me infinite dungeons are going to give me infinite mana, which is a lot easier to win with the elves.
Sure. Okay, good. Love that. Don't play a Cerac.
I'm going to play, so most of our reducers, I'm going to attempt them to in 2 mana like Goreclaw, so that in that way, I don't have to die on the stream doing it.
Right.
I think Birgi could do it if you want to just have company hits.
Birgi does it, but Birgi does it the painful way.
I mean, it's all painful. You're talking about venturing into the dungeon.
Yeah.
300 times.
I just, to be clear, I'm someone who will happily play Urza Thopter Sword. I will happily play Hullbreaker Horror combo on Magic Online. You could not get me to play this venture into the dungeon combo. I will not do it.
I mean, I love venturing into the dungeon. I used to be a pauper player.
No, yeah, normally, not 80 times.
No, in initiative is sort of the annoying way.
No, this is much worse than the initiative. I don't know what the initiative is, but it can't be worse than this.
If I see an initiative card, I'm gonna eat it.
All right, more anything else besides that nonsense combo?
So besides the beautiful nonsense, for the pauper players, I'm super excited. I mean, I'm super sad for all the other pauper players. I'm super happy for me because Paupertron is back. It was my favorite deck in the format, and it sucks for everybody else. But we got a reprint of a banned card that's better than the banned one.
It's not better.
It's better.
You're talking about the fixed prophetic prism.
Energy refractor over mental prism. Yeah.
Why is that better than the prophetic prism?
Because it doesn't tap. When you are playing Popper in games 2 and 3, once you start getting into more mana intensive cards or pip intensive, mana stops being an issue, and color pips are.
But in the early game, it's giving you a bad rate, right? It's 2 mana in for 1 mana out.
Yeah, but early game you don't need that much mana. Early game you are not fixing because you don't have Tron. You don't have Tron until turn 5 or 6. You're playing like a slow control deck with tap lands. You go like turn 1 tap land, turn 2 Tron land, turn 3 Tron land, use the color mana from the tap land, turn 4 tap land, turn 5 Tron. And it's not on that turn 5 where you're going to start needing a lot of mana.
I also at this point want to point out that they made I'm going to say, very large change in the way collector number worked in this set. If you sort the set by collector number, artifacts with colored costs or activations are grouped with their color, but at the end of the color.
Not only that, there's an artifact without any color activation or cost that's with the blue card.
What? Why?
And let me find it. Because it makes sense. Let me find it. It makes sense.
Does it?
Sort of.
Does it? Come on now.
Sort of? Let me find it. But I forgot about this topic, but you just gave me the perfect way to mention
Oh, there it is. Coastal Bulwark. Because it gets +2/+0 as long as you control an island. I'm so upset. I'm so annoyed. I'm so annoyed by this. It's just, I can't. Anyway.
All right, any other cards you guys are excited to brew before we get to our overrated section?
I think those were my fun shenanigans.
I'm very interested in the fact that they said there was only one colored artifact in this entire set, and it sucks. So,
which one is the colored artifact?
The Temporal Anchor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's.
It's not that bad.
It's that bad. It doesn't do anything.
It's super bad.
It draws you 2 cards a turn.
For 6 mana, legendary artifact, it doesn't do anything.
You're gonna draw me 2 cards on ETV, plus kill a creature, and then go home and kiss my mother goodbye. It has to do all the tasks in order for me to pay 6 mana.
You know what? You know what's a 6 mana colored artifact that's worth playing? Bolus's Citadel. That's worth playing. You can win an entire plate of, like, a tray of cookies delivered to your door. With that card.
Yeah. It does kiss the homies goodbye.
Right.
Good night.
Yeah.
It does everything you need it to do. This doesn't.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, well, maybe that's a good segue to the overrated section. Closing out here, gotta throw some pot shots out there. You know, your favorite card sucks, that kind of thing. That's
you
the
gotta
idea
do it.
here. I have no idea what people actually think about these cards.
You gotta stir the pot, Dan.
Exactly. I've got 5 cards here that are overrated. So if you like these cards, I'm coming for you. I'm talking about you. Starting these off with Diabolic Intent. Seeing a lot of opinions like, they start off their explanation with, well, tutors are always good, and this is whatever, etc., etc., etc. We gotta stop right there. This is not true. Tutors are not always good, and in fact, tutoring at sorcery speed has been shown to be quite bad. Like, there are no playable sorcery speed tutors. Profane tutor is like, okay, that's all we're talking about here. Even Demonic Tutor would not be that amazing of a card. I'll just come out and say that.
No, it wouldn't be. It's a huge tempo cost. The only way you can do it is if you're like going to win the game that turn.
So we can make this like a Demonic Tutor if we're in some kind of sacrifice synergy deck. Even then, we have to be careful. We have to make sure that whatever we're tutoring for is worth the extra 2 mana. Because if not, we should have just cast a Deadly Dispute or a Village Rites.
I think it goes the other way around. I think you have to make sure that whatever card you get is a lot better or is significantly better than the extra card and the treasure. So it's better than 2 random cards from your deck and a treasure every single time. Which is not easy for a card to do.
There are ways to do that. The trick about it is that most of the decks that are trying to do that already have better tools. So, for example, Yawgmoth is already playing Court of Calling and
Eldritch
Evolution. And those are much better than this card at doing the thing. So much better.
So with all those caveats out there, if you want to brew with this, that's fine. I'm okay
Sure.
with that. You may even succeed.
I'm going to do it.
Like the spike deck, the aspiring spike deck that we were talking about earlier, it checks the boxes, right? It's a sacrifice synergy deck. It's using diabolic intent to win the game, right? Not just make treasures, but actually trying to assemble a game-winning combo, Archon of Cruelty plus persist, basically. That's what you have to do. You have to be like, okay, I'm actually tutoring for something that wins the game, and the cost is not too high because I'm already playing fodder. So if you can do that, sure, go nuts. But if you're not doing that, like, you will be disappointed by diabolic intent. Second card that's vastly, vastly overrated, Phyrexian Flesh Gorger. Every time I think, oh, people aren't that high on this, I like go back on Reddit or something and I browse the comments and like, oh my god, what are people seeing in this card? Even talking to David about it, he's like, well, 1 black, 3/3 lifelink menace, like that's good. That is not good. That is not good. I don't know why we think that is good. There is a card called Kunaros, Hound of Athreos, 3 mana, menace, lifelink, and vigilance, and relevant graveyard hate that sees 0 play anywhere. Like we've seen this before. These stats are not good, and the ward just being life, I mean, that's not what ward should be. Ward should be mana or a card.
I mean, it makes sense in black aggro decks that the ward being life is something that those people care about. But you're right, this is like frequently talked about without context. It's just like, look how great this is. And it's like, it's just not.
You really need the 3 life to hurt. Like, you really need to be in an aggressive shit for that word to be relevant.
So let's say I'm playing black aggro. Do I really care if my 3-drop has lifelink or not?
No, you can do. You can.
You can do a lot better than 3/3 menace lifelink.
The problem is you can clearly do better than this, right? There are graveyard trespassers in this world.
So for me, I just don't see this at all.
Yeah, it's no worm coil engine.
So that's number 2 on my overrated list. Number 3 overrated card, Arcane Proxy. Sorry, David. I did put it on the most impactful for Pioneer out of deference to David, but I just don't see what this card actually does. Specifically in Modern, like, you can cast your Crashing Footfalls, but I really don't think you should. Like, it's taking a slot away from another Cascade spell in that instance. In Pioneer, I mean, yes, this is the first Snapcaster effect, but outside of exactly See the Truth, I don't think that a 3 mana 2/1 body that casts like a Consider is anything special.
Yeah, the if you cast it clause really nails this thing, because otherwise it would be kind of interesting in something like, I don't know, Glimpse of Tomorrow. But it won't be. Exactly.
Right? Every cool thing you're thinking of, and you're like, oh, that's right, actually, that doesn't work because it doesn't do anything if you didn't cast it. So it's just a surprisingly fair mechanic, the prototype mechanic. Like, it's just MDFCs in disguise.
It's just hidden MDFCs, yeah. 100%.
Number 4 overrated card. This one's for you, Mord. It's Portal to Phyrexia. I get why people like this. 9 mana, big impressive artifact, and we're always looking for impressive artifacts that are not nerfed by an if you cast it clause. Portal to Phyrexia seems to be the biggest such card, but I just don't think it does enough. I think in some matchups it will do literally nothing. Like, ETB kills 3 creatures, but not every matchup has creatures to kill. Then what's your payoff? You get to rebuy 1 creature a turn? It's not like God Pharaoh's Gift. They're not big. They're just whatever you have, that's what you get. If you had a Citrus Supplier, you get a 1/1 back. So I don't think this card is going to be like the slam dunk that people are expecting when they build their decks around it.
Yeah, I agree on that part. I feel like if it said creature or planeswalker on both halves, then we're talking, but it doesn't.
It would be a lot better, yeah.
Yeah, that's not the world we live in, so good luck.
Well, Mord, do you see like there's some potential for this?
I think there might be some shape by new brews popping up, but I don't know if they will be good because of exactly that. The thing is, however, in Modern, most decks are creature-based. At least, like, the huge majority of them.
Yeah, that's definitely true. The thing is, like, this doesn't do anything against burn. You raise this out, you're like, oh, okay. Guess I died.
Yeah, but against Vortide, against Hammer, against Creativity, because Creativity is going to have an Archon in the graveyard 80% of the games.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but then, like, some of these other things you've listed, like Hammer Time, it's like, yeah, I guess you could do this, but then they can just have Inkbot. Like, I'm not saying.
No, I mean, you make the sack 3 and the chests that are playing this are like 4 Furies, 4 Solitude, then you start getting back your 5 mana stuff.
That's the real thing that I think is worth pointing out here is that the brews that I have seen proposed do have a very interesting angle of playing their own pitch creatures that end up in the graveyard and that are good to reanimate. So
if your opponent's creatures are not good, it means they're going to be like a creature deck and you can just start getting back a bunch of your pitch elementals every single turn.
Correct. And whether that's good enough or not, that remains to be seen. But at least that is an important point, is that I don't think you're going to see any like Indomitable Creativity decks that are trying to get this into play and have no other creatures in them. That I don't think that that's a successful way to brew this.
No, that's a mistake. Then you just get Archon, I think. So this is only with Shape Anew. Like, is the advantage of having creatures worth the disadvantage of having this over Archon?
Right. Or some other way to cheat it into play. Trash for Treasure is a way to do that.
All right, last card to call out here, Titania, Voice of Gaia. This is the meld card, and I gotta say, I fully support people who just want to meld to Titania and just do the thing, climb the mountain because it's there. Why not? That's sweet. Build those decks, but I don't think we should go into that expecting Titania herself to be a good card. 3 mana for 3/4 reach, gains life when lands go to the graveyard. That to me is just like not enough.
It's no endurance.
It's definitely not endurance. I mean, it has endurance stats, right? That's what people say, but it doesn't have flash, first of all. That's huge.
Doesn't clear their graveyard.
Correct. So I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Like, is Titania going to overperform? Because I felt the same way about Sheoldred, and I was very wrong about that. Maybe this is just beefy enough, and it affects life totals enough.
I mean, the Sheoldred talk has once again shifted, as Calister and a few more said the card is completely overrated.
I don't think...
Like, the Sheoldred banter is back to being Kalitas.
I think Sheoldred is becoming rated. I think Sheoldred is getting to the right spot where it always should have been, where it's like, this is a reasonable choice. It doesn't have an enter the battlefield trigger, but it is a very difficult to solve threat that ends the game quite quickly.
Yeah, so Titania, to me, overrated. And I mentioned this here because when I posted our set review, angry commenters were like, I can't believe you guys didn't talk about Titania.
No, it's...
And that was A, because we already talked about Titania previous weeks. And B, because it's not good.
I keep reading...
2 reasons why.
I keep reading Titania and expecting it to bring a land from the graveyard to the battlefield when it enters. Like, something...
It did it at reasonable ETB.
It's missing something, right? It just feels like it's missing something. It's just not good enough.
It follows a pattern. I mean, we should take a lesson from the pattern. Urza, Mishra, and Titania, the 3 meld cards. They made one of the meld cards sort of okay, like Phyrexian Dragon Engine, Mightstone, Weakstone, and the land.
Right.
Those cards are all fine.
Agreed.
And the cost of trying to meld them is you have to play like a derpy bad legend. Urza, Mishra, Titania. Titania is a derpy bad legend by this logic.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
And I just see people like not evaluating it that way. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure people will try this and maybe they'll report back soon with their findings.
I want to see screenshots of Titania, with Titania Gaia Incarnate. I want to see it. I want to see it in play. I support that part of doing the thing. When I was younger, I very much decried the value of being a Timmy and finding joy in just doing the thing. And when I got older, I realized that's what life is so much about, is just doing the thing and getting that smile on your face. It's so good. So if that's what you want to do, you go do it. And I am excited to see it.
All right, so that's our top 5s show. Top 5 for Modern, top 5 for Pioneer, top 5 to brew with, and top 5 overrated. Guys, what do you think? Did we miss anything? Any final shoutouts, cards you want to rally for one last time?
One card I hadn't considered I'm going to play a bit because it's just the perfect more card is the Combat Thresher. Not sure where, not sure the format.
Yeah, so I wanted to hear your opinion on this. We covered it earlier, but I really wanted your opinion on it.
I think this is like the perfect design for a prototype card, right? Like, it really shows you what you want to do with it. It really wants you to play this as a cantrip, a small body attach, and then get a big body attach with another draw. I really like the card. I don't know where you fit it, though. That's my bigger issue.
Yeah. But that's the interesting thing to solve, right?
Yeah, that's what I want to look. I don't know if it's in Modern, I don't know if in Pioneer. The fact that it can't get in with Vial or Coco is super annoying. Like, that's the biggest issue.
I mean, how about this? Shape anew for Combat Thresher. Draw a card.
Draw a card, put a 3/3 into play, concede.
I mean, in that case, though, at least you get to play 4 Combat Threshers in your deck.
Exactly.
Oh, all the threshers.
Yeah,
Look at the value.
Do some threshing.
I'm gonna do some threshing.
Like, do you not? I mean, I feel like at some point someone's going to 5-0 with mono white taxes, just playing 4 of this card and 4 ephemerates. Like, is that
Yeah. Seems completely possible? Yeah. It's like the new Mirran Crusader.
Right. Is it good? No. It's not the greatest thing, but it's not bad. It'll kill people sometimes.
No, it's not terrible at all. It's super annoying for some decks.
Oh, it's like how they would play the red Achroma. They would morph it and then Flicker Wisp it.
And let me tell you something. You see all those chains? Do you know how many sword of X and Y you can attach to those things? This thing can hold a lot of swords, baby.
How many swords?
Yeah.
How many swords I can carry with this unendingable, unpushable creature?
This is like General Grievous.
Yes, exactly.
It's whipping them all around.
Exactly. Somebody get a altar going. Get a sick altar going where you get General Grievous on the Combat Thresher, and
this sword will make a fine addition to my collection.
We can't go down the Grievous hole again.
Wait, did we ever go down the Grievous hole?
I feel like I had a conversation with I've gone down the Grievous hole with nerd friends about how wasted that character was in the actual like canon movies.
But how good is it in the Clone Wars?
Right, exactly.
It's so good.
Anyway, before we...
All right, we better wrap this up now.
Before we get into the Grievous hole, I want to just slightly talk then about search engine.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So, do you like the card? I don't hate it.
I just want to play it with Grand Architect. That is it.
You just want to play Blue Steel.
Exactly.
You just need an excuse to play Blue Steel.
Exactly.
Alright, that makes sense.
And if you do, you got the new Urza to play.
Yeah.
One of the 3.
Couture.
Yeah. No, just one, right? There's only one worth playing in Blue Steel. The Lord.
Oh, yeah, the Lord. Isn't that Commander?
No.
Okay.
There's one that gives your artifact creatures +2/+2.
Oh, yeah, I know. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't want to like spend mana leveling up my Surge Engine, taking Defender away. That's all nonsense. I just want to play Grand Architect, play Surge Engine.
Make it blue and pay 6.
Make it blue and pay 6. That's it. That's all I want to do.
I want to skip all the steps I can.
And that makes sense. And then the fail case is you can do the slow way. You don't want to do it, but if you have to.
Yeah.
It's there.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, so I think that's it for our top 5 show, and with a little Magic 30 Vegas tournament report thrown in, that means that we're done with previews. That means that in our next show, we actually get to start finally brewing with these cards, and we have got a banger picked out. It is Arcane Proxy, so we'll be back with that next time. Until then, Zach, Mord, I bid you farewell.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
That's a wrap on this edition of the Faithless Brewing Podcast. Tune in next time for new brews with Arcane Proxy, plus testing results with Vesuvan Dupomancy. Support for this podcast is provided by brewers like you. Join the Faithless family and help support the show at patreon.com/faithlessbrewing for Discord access, bonus content, and more. That's all for today. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.